Welcome to the Keeping the Nostalgia Alive show. I am your host, Billy Powell. With us today is guest Dave Iha. David, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I know you have a hectic schedule, and we appreciate you sharing your story about basketball, especially basketball in Indiana, and keeping nostalgia alive.
Oh, thanks for having me, Billy. A big fan of your work and listen to the podcast quite a bit. So pleased to be joined.
So what I am going to do here, and you just tell me what you think when you see these.
Oh, yes. Roger Bacon High School. Man, brings back some great memories. 1982 state champ team. And, it was a remarkable run. When I look at that group, we had one player on that team, Billy, that was over 6'4". And we had, it was a heck of a tourney run. 3A, which in the time was the largest class in the state of Ohio. And I think our last four games in that state tournament were decided by 9 points, and beat a team, Barberton, in overtime and in the state championship. Great memories.
That's awesome. And, who introduced you to the game of basketball?
I was the youngest of five kids, but really, it was my dad that got me involved in sports. My dad was a all-state baseball player, basketball player. Really, from the time I was a kid, there were sports around our house. My dad played competitive softball till he was 78. So ever since I was a kid, he coached all of our teams, and we were constantly either going to games or playing. But ever since I was a kid, really, it was my dad that got me involved in all sports.
Were you a big baseball fan?
I was a huge baseball fan. I grew up in Cincinnati, and if you think about that, I was 10 years old at the time of the Big Red Machine. And so, how could you not get caught up in Pete Rose? Everybody wanted to head first slide, and you ran to first base after a walk. So it was a great time to be a Reds fan and grow up in that era, no question.
I was born and raised in Indianapolis, and the Indianapolis Indians was a AAA farm club for the Cincinnati Reds. So I got to see the Cincinnati Reds come to town a couple times a year, and got to see a lot of the players growing up in that farm system go on to play for the Cincinnati Reds. But what a great baseball program at that time.
It was awesome, and as a kid, I remember this. We used to go down to the Hyatt Hotel when we were young and collect autographs from the visiting teams that would come to town. And I remember Tommy Lasorda coming out and chatting me and a bunch of 12-year-olds signing autographs and cutting it up. But that was just awesome. The parades, I still remember that, downtown Fountain Square, and going to old Riverfront Stadium at the time. But I was hooked, and unfortunately, as much as I love the Reds, I've also been a lifelong suffering Bengals fan. So you kind of you get a little of both.
It's interesting. You talk about the Bengals fan, being a Bengals fan. Kenny Anderson was one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time.
Oh my gosh! And I think that's a guy worthy of getting in the Hall of Fame. But I went to the Super Bowl in '82, the loss to the 49ers. I was at the Freezer Bowl. And again, it was a lot of that was my dad, taking me and going, and I can't even count the number of games and events and everything that we did together. It was awesome.
We know everything that you went on to Ball State and what you do now, but Tell us a little bit, and you know about Indiana high school basketball and the single class tournament and all of that kind of stuff. But what was basketball like, high school basketball like in Ohio compared to Indiana?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, it's the comparison in the state tournaments. It's not close. And I found out firsthand the difference. It didn't take long. The very first day I got on campus at Ball State, I was in the basketball office, and Dan Palambizio was in the basketball office, and I met him my first day, and we hung out that later that day, and it was amazing the number of kids that came up to him. Hey, you're Dan Palambizio from Michigan City Rogers. And so that was before the internet. So you really didn't hear as much about Indiana. You knew it was one class, but it did not take long at all to just get a sense of how important it was. And in Ohio, people I don't think could tell you. I listen to your podcast, and people can go back and they'll remember in 1977 who won the state championship in Indiana. And you may have, there's a certain group of Ohio basketball fans that'll go to the state tournament every year. But it didn't have near the statewide, the statewide interest as you did in Indiana. I think the other thing is you would meet students on campus, and everybody would talk about the sectional. In Ohio, no, you couldn't find 10 kids from different parts of the state that would tell you who was playing in the sectional. It was just a different animal. And man, I loved it. I thought it was unique, and I jumped right in. I mean, we'd go to Muncie Fieldhouse on Friday nights before we'd have to check into the hotel, and I thought it was awesome.
When you were young, did you ever foresee yourself doing what you do now with with ESPN and with calling Ball State Cardinals basketball?
Like every other kid, when I would be out there shooting on my own, I would be calling down the last minute, and I'd hit the game-winning shot. I had kind of a unique experience. My next door neighbor growing up was a guy by the name of Mike Mathis that refereed in the NBA for 30 years. And it was a neat luxury. Not only did Mike have three sons that were around my age, but it was a great opportunity. Mike would take us to, every time he had a game at the Pacers, we'd go over there. He would drag us in the locker rooms. We'd go on road trips with him. And so it was a great opportunity to get behind the scenes. And so from a young age, seeing that if I couldn't play in the NBA or Major League Baseball, somehow, some way, I wanted to stay involved or get involved in sports, whether it was coaching, broadcasting, but being exposed to that at an early age, it was definitely something I thought about.
Tell us a little bit more about your dad.
Yeah, so an amazing man. He went to Reading High School. He was an all-state center fielder. Actually had scholarship offers to play basketball at the University of Cincinnati. And he was I'm going to get kind of choked up here. He passed away about 4 years ago, but he basically showed me the way, whether it was in my professional life, being a father, being a coach. And like a lot of coaches' sons, he was maybe a little bit tougher. But my dad played competitive softball. He was 78 years old. He would play in the Senior Olympics, and travel all over the country. And so, it was just awesome. He would do a bowling league on Thursday night. He would take me there. He'd fill out his NFL card. I'm in sixth grade. He'd let me do that with him. But, it was just awesome. He was a role model, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him, and and what he meant to me and really my life and sports in general.
Growing up, what kind of a basketball fan were you? Did you follow any kind of pro team? Did you, were you out on your basketball court and emulating a particular basketball player? Were you a huge basketball fan of a couple different basketball players?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll go back to Mike Mathis. He had a court in his backyard that had a 8-foot hoop and a 10-foot hoop. And we would be out there and play from morning till night. In the wintertime, we would have the heaters lined up. But having him as an NBA official, if there was a certain player, Mike would go out of his way to either get you an autograph, or if they came to town to play the Pacers. Growing up, I was a huge Los Angeles Laker fan. And so, every time the Lakers came to Indiana, that one time a year, I'd go over there if Mike ever had a game, on the road as I got older. But I think back, like a lot of kids, Julius Erving, huge Dr. J fan, and of course, Larry Legend. And it was great because every year Mike would have a charity golf outing. So as I got older, I got a chance to meet a lot of those guys at his golf outing, which you could see a lot of the stuff, and the Larry Bird ball behind me and a bunch of other stuff is really how I come across a lot of that stuff.
As you were going through your high school years, when did you start getting recruited, and what school did you really want to go to, and what leads to the decision to go to Ball State?
Yeah. So the state championship year was my junior year. I had a good senior year. I was all city, all greater Cincinnati, and Roger Bacon, we were in there with Moeller and Elder and LaSalle. I played 3 sports: football, basketball, and baseball. And I was getting a lot of smaller division 3 offers, some small division 1 schools on the East. I was, as a kid, I grew up going to Xavier and Cincinnati basketball camps, and it's unusual to be fans of both, but I had in my mind that I wanted to go somewhere to play Division 1, and I kept waiting and kept waiting. And it was a little bit different back then because you didn't have an AAU summer circuit. And so I kind of bet on myself. There was a junior college here in town. It's Cincinnati State now. At the time, it was Cincinnati Tech. And he said, come here to this junior college and you'll get stronger. And what happened was he had a lot of the Division 1 schools writing to me that I should go to junior college for 2 years. And so I was about ready to do that. And I had created a bunch of videotapes that I was sending out on my own. That was kind of one of the unfortunate things. Our high school coach really didn't do a good job of promoting his players. And I sent a tape to Al Brown, who happened to be a friend of Mike Mathis. They were classmates at Purdue. And so Al Brown got a hold of me, and I went over and visited, and he said, look, we don't have any scholarships available this first year, but, we'll put you on the team. You can walk on, and, we've got some guys graduating. And I thought about it and say, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself and come here. I didn't want to go to junior college and stay at home. It was 2 hours away from Cincinnati, and best decision I ever made.
And the really neat thing was just about, 3 weeks ago, Al Brown was inducted into the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And it's great. I texted Coach and I'm so excited for him and Ray McCallum going in as well. But Al Brown means the world to me. I still stay in touch with Coach. I'm so elated for him being inducted. He's meant so much in my life. He was a great mentor, cared about his players. And we went through some great times, the NCAA tournament in '86, and then 2 years later when Ball State let him go, as a senior. That was tough to see, somebody you cared about and the family, to kind of go through that and kind of see the business of college sports play out. But such a worthy guy, only guy to ever coach in the men's national championship game and the women's. Quite a distinction.
Okay, so I'm going to embarrass you a little bit more and show a couple more photos. What do we think about, and tell us a little bit about that?
Well, look, that's one of the shorts, Billy. Now it's come back full circle. We got a kid on our team, Tyler Cochran, that's got legs like Robert Newhouse, and he hikes his shorts way up. But yeah, it's amazing. You went from that to the Fab Five, and now look where we're back again.
Man, I have not heard the words Robert Newhouse in a long, long time.
You remember that, right? I mean,
yes, those were huge.
Cowboys. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's funny. It is funny.
So how is life on the Ball State campus? Because I went to Indiana State University from 86 to 90. And of course, we had 2 semesters. And it always just blew my mind that you guys had tri-semesters.
Yeah, it's Ball State is, I love the place. I mean, it is such a phenomenal school. And I think you talk about an appreciation for Indiana, and what I came to love is so many people from smaller towns and communities, and it was the most welcoming, friendly place that you could imagine, and coming, not like Cincinnati was Manhattan, but I really embraced that atmosphere. And man, I got such an appreciation for again the high school basketball and those sectional tournaments, and hearing kids from the smaller hometowns talk about their experience. And yeah, it's an awesome school. It's amazing how it's grown. We got a beautiful arena now, and I'm just super proud of my school. And man, I got a great gig. I mean, I get to sit courtside and do games for the school I went to, and that I love.
I'm going to show you another one. Or is that the same one? Did I just show you that one?
Yeah, it's the same one. There's got to
Okay.
be one with a mustache coming up here. I feel it.
All right. Nope, the same one. Hold on. I got another one here. Sorry, I do not have a producer here. Let's see. Nope.
There's the mustache. There you go.
Yeah.
And you could see the hairline really started to recede even back then. But yeah, and I think that was probably my senior year when Rick Majerus took over as our coach. Was we could do an hour show on just sharing Coach Majerus stories. There he is, right there. Just an incredible coach. It's interesting when I talk about Coach, I'll separate it in 2 buckets. First talk about the character and some of the stories. Such a unique guy. And, everybody that ever played or been around Coach can have some stories, but there's a couple that come to mind. There was a place, a rib joint in Muncie called QL's. And as we know, Coach, he loved to eat. And Billy, we would be practicing and break for free throws, and Coach would leave the court, and about 10 minutes later, he'd come back with barbecue sauce on his sweatshirt. So, I mean, we always got a kick out of that. And just a funny guy, super smart. Like he had a master's degree in English literature. And so just the talks that he would give us about life and direction, And I still stayed in touch with him. I would travel a lot for work. If I would ever go out to Salt Lake City on business while he was coaching Utah, I would go see him. He was living in a hotel. But from a basketball standpoint, I still to this day, there's phrases and things that are ingrained in my mind that he taught me that I'll use on broadcasts all the time. And it was only 1 year, but it was just incredible. I used to go and sit in his office, and I would just hang out there. By the way, he had a pop machine in his office, not the basketball office, his 8x10 office with a pop machine in it. But you would sit in there, and he had come from the Milwaukee Bucks and Don Nelson, so he had so many contacts. But you could sit in his office, and it would be amazing the calls that he would get. I was in there one time. I remember Scott Skiles called him. He had him on the speakerphone. It was when he had hurt his back, and he was almost in tears. And he had called, Coach Majerus, talking about how the end of his career was coming to an end. I'd be in there, and he'd call John Chaney talking about, hey, I'm exploring the 2-3 zone and this and that. But just an incredible basketball mind, and it's a shame we lost him way too young.
What was it like with that transition between Coach Brown and Coach Majerus? Were you, for example, Coach Bill Smith was my high school basketball coach, and he just got into the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame with this induction class with Coach Al Brown, and he left. And Coach Roger Schroeder came in from Marshall High School, and Roger Schroeder was a member of the 1954 Milan Indians. And my initial reaction, of course, I didn't play for Roger Schroeder, but my initial reaction was, you're going to have to prove that I need to like you, to like you. So what was it like with that transfer from Coach Brown to Coach Majerus?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I had been with Al Brown for 4 years, so I was a fifth-year senior. And typically what happens in that situation is a guy's going to bring in his players, really concentrate on what the future looks like. And so, I was admittedly nervous that, was I going to be kind of the odd man out? And to his credit, he gave everybody a fair chance. And, I played quite a bit and learned a ton in the process. And it turned out to, to be a really enjoyable year. I ended up getting hurt at the end of the season, dislocated my shoulder about 3 weeks to go in the season during a game, came back about 5 minutes to go in our MAC championship game, or MAC first round tournament. Guy went up, reached in, dislocated my shoulder, and that was it. And then we lost on a buzzer beater. So, but he was awesome. I mean, he could have very easily kind of just said, look, I'm going with the younger guys, but no, he was brutally honest, but brutally fair.
Before graduating from Ball State, what was your future prospects? What did you want to do? What did you end up starting to do after graduating college?
Yeah. So, it's funny. I look back on it at the time. I had considered maybe going into coaching. Certainly wasn't good enough to play over in Europe, but there were some connections that I had where I could have gone to a small country like Denmark, just not to make any money, but to go over there and play and kind of experience the world for a year. But with injuring my shoulder, and it's interesting. I listened to your podcast with Coach Spence, and he talked about when he was done at NC State, how it had lost its fun. And I think looking back on it, that's kind of where I was at. I'd been through 5 years, knee surgeries, my shoulder, and I was just at a point I was maybe a little bit burnt out. And so, at that point I thought, what, I'm just going to take my degree and get out into the working world. And that's, that's the choice I made, which absolutely turned out fine. I'd second guess maybe going into the coaching, but I got my fix doing that with AAU and coaching my kids and helping out at the high school. So yeah, it turned out fine.
So what do you do today besides doing Ball State basketball?
Yeah, so director of national accounts for a company that services the restaurant industry. So my job is to go out and call on restaurant chains all over the country and sell them our products and services. So I've been in the restaurant industry for 25 years now. So it's a great gig, terrific industry to be in, and also, affords me the flexibility to do the games and combine work, when I need to, if we've got a road game. But great company, great industry, and really enjoy it.
Have you or had you been to a lot of Indiana high school basketball games while you were at Ball State or post Ball State?
Yeah, a ton. We used to have to check in to a hotel on Friday nights. We had to be there about 9:30. And so it was not uncommon for us at all to go to the Muncie Field House or one of the local high school games and do that before we had to go check into the hotel. And one of the things I remember, which kind of got me hooked, is my very first year. What we used to do prior to the season, we didn't play exhibitions. We would do red and white scrimmages, and you would go around to the different high schools when we would play our inter squad scrimmages. And I'll never forget, as a freshman, going to Newcastle for an inter squad scrimmage. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is a high school gym, and so from that moment on, you hear a lot about Indiana basketball, but then when you see that, you see the wigwam over in Anderson, that's when it hit home that, these people take it serious.
Do you think that class basketball has kind of degraded the game in Indiana high school basketball?
My personal opinion is I do. And again, I'm coming from Ohio, where we've got class basketball, so I've seen the differences. I get what people say, that the opportunity for the smaller classes to celebrate state championships. The one thing I'll say about that, and I'll go back to what I was saying earlier, is it seemed to me there was almost as much recognition and pride on a smaller school that maybe advanced and won a sectional as if it is now at a state tournament. So I feel like that got lost somewhere in the equation. It was as big a deal for a smaller school. Maybe it wasn't winning a state title, but if they won a sectional, that resonated to me with the local community and the students, and people remembered that every bit as much as winning a state title in the classes. So that's kind of my take on it.
What leads you into broadcasting, and what were, just like we talked about the game of basketball, what were some of the broadcasters that you learned from?
Yeah, so this is my 19th season. So 19 years ago, Ball State had an opening to do their games for a color analyst, and they went out and asked some of us former players if we would come back. And I thought, sure. I mean, I love the game. It's always something I wanted to do, and I said absolutely. And so I did a few games, apparently did okay. And they said, they had invited a bunch of players and said, that's a little too much. Would you mind doing it full time? And I said, sure. And, the one thing I learned early on is if you prepare, there's nothing to be anxious or nervous about. And so I really prided myself on preparation still to this day. And then, as far as people I listen to, UB Brown was a big, influence on me. Doug Collins. Those are guys that when I would listen to the game, that they would help teach, all the while make it entertaining, but you felt like you learned something, and they knew a little bit about everybody on each team, what was going on. So, but those are guys that, and it's kind of like Romo in football. You feel like you learn, you're watching a game, you get something out of it more than, it's not just X's and O's, but you do feel like you learn a little bit along the way.
Indiana State University, which I graduated from, has had its peaks and its valleys. Indiana University, same way, not as many. Purdue University, same way, not as many. What's it going to take, or what is the state of Ball State basketball, or what's it going to take to make Ball State, legitimate?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. And I man, I think James Whitford has done a tremendous job, and he is the right coach. I love that guy. I mean, he has done such a great job recruiting the state of Indiana. I think we've had 10 Indiana All-Stars. I think we've got 3 on our roster right now. So you've got to try to build a fence around the state of Indiana and get those kids. But I think, Billy, whether you're talking about Indiana State or Ball State or Indiana, and you talk about the state of the game, I don't think you can do it without talking about what's going on with the transfer portal right now, and how that it's changed the game, and it's almost out of control. And I look, you take James Whitford and, go out and recruit Jerron Coleman. At a mid-major school like Ball State, you have to find those kids that are the diamonds in the rough. And when you find those kids and you recruit them and you develop them, and 2 years later they leave and go to a Missouri, it makes it difficult. And so, it's sad to say, but kind of the state of the game we're at, we're playing 3 freshmen a lot of minutes right now. And whether it's our freshman or I see somebody else, the first thing that comes to your mind when you're watching a mid-major and you see a freshman, say, my God, how are they going to keep this kid? And, that's a problem, because you don't get the continuity. You don't have those, Ray McCallum, he played 4 years at Ball State, you just don't have that continuity, and it makes it difficult for the I think the mid-major guys to have that success over time. And so it's kind of be like a general manager managing an NBA lineup. You've got to go get those guys in the portal that are maybe at a bigger school moving down. But I think it's tough getting that continuity and the team that plays together, loves each other, and have been together for a long time. So these are interesting times. There's no question about
it. I watched your call of Ball State and IU, Indiana University Kokomo, and in watching the whole ball game, is it me, or Ball State is thick, like big, muscular? There's no bones about them. Does that make sense? Or I mean, is a lot more time being spent in the gym or lifting or in the weight room? Or
yeah. I mean, it's incredible, the strength program and the technology that they use, in their training. And then, a lot of it is the kids nowadays, back when I was, in high school, you lifted weights a little bit. It was not a big deal. Now you're seeing these kids come out of high school that are so much more developed, and I look at our freshman, Peyton Sparks. Here's a young man that went from 270 pounds to 240 between his senior year and freshman at Ball State, put on a ton of muscle. And so I got to give it to kids like that, man. They put the time in and the effort, but no question, strength training is probably one of the biggest changes when you look back, the differences 20 years ago, the physical maturity that you see out of these kids, particularly the ones graduating high school. It's night and day from what it was.
Where are some of your favorite places to call a game, of course, besides Ball State?
Yeah. You know what? I like Indiana State. I mean, that's always been a good atmosphere, and those games seem to be competitive. Of course, Hinkle Fieldhouse, is awesome. You're going over to Butler. In our league, boy, it's and that's something that's changed. Used to be Miami was a great place. Their program's been down a little bit, so the atmosphere isn't near what it was. Buffalo is that's a great place to play. Terrific atmosphere. They get a great crowd. And I always enjoy every year our non-conference schedule. We'll typically mix in a Big Ten team. This year we went to Xavier, which was special for me going home, and that was a packed house and a great atmosphere. So and there's obviously doing the MAC tournament up in Cleveland. That's always a ton of fun. I'm still waiting to get that championship so we can make another trip to the NCAA, but the atmosphere of March, can't beat it. It's awesome.
Which have you ridden more? The Racer, the Beast, or the Screaming Demon?
Definitely the Racer. Yeah, definitely the Racer. And for a guy that's been to Kings Island, I was not the Beast. That was not my cup of tea. A wooden roller coaster, that rickety. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't been on the Racer in quite some time, but yeah, bring it back to my Cincinnati roots.
And for those who don't know, we're talking about Kings Island. Of course, the Racer now goes forwards and backwards, or did.
Yeah. I'll have to take your word on it if it still does.
So I have while you're broadcasting and calling games, do you ever have a brain fart or a brain dream, and how do you snap yourself out of it and focus calling a full basketball game?
I think the biggest challenge is the European names. It's so there are some names that you come across that no matter how many times you practice it and in the moment, and you just can't spit it out. So that's probably that's the biggest thing. But in fact, I got my chart. Whoa, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I got my chart. I don't know if you can see this right here. I kind of lost you, but so this is what I prepare for every game. So we've got Illinois State tomorrow. So I kind of got all the stats here. I got my notes on each player. So, that part I'm good on. But if there's a name that I can't pronounce, I'll lean on my partner, Joel. And, typically I'll call him by his first name, or I'll say, look, Joel, let's get together. If I'm going to call him the wrong name, do the same thing. Nobody will ever know. So.
And how long have you been calling games with Joel?
This is our 9th year. I think I did 10 with the legend Maury Manny's, and Joel and I are in our 9th year. Really enjoy that relationship. I've been blessed, to spend 10 years a Hall of Famer like Maury, and a guy that broadcast the games when I played, and then to sit next to him in the booth, that was just outstanding. And I think Joe and I love doing the games with him. I think our our rapport and the relationship that him and I have is fantastic. Ball State's lucky to have him as our play-by-play guy.
Is the passion about the same? Or tell us a little bit about the passion of the game from Ball State fans from when you were there. And, is it something that needs to be recaptured today?
Yeah, I mean, there's there's so many other options, so I think it will get there. If you look, it's not just Ball State, the attendance around the entire conference, Ball State, we have great fans. Traditionally, we are always first or second in the Mid-American Conference when it comes to fans. And if we look at, if its attendance is down, we're still getting 4 to 5,000 a game. There's schools in our league, Billy, they're drawing 1,200 fans at Eastern Michigan or Northern Illinois. So, and I think one of the things that maybe hurts a little bit is we have beautiful large arena. When you get 4,000 or 5,000 in such a big place, it can seem a little empty. But they're starved. They're knowledgeable, great fans, and they just want to see good basketball in a winter. And we've had good crowds. It's going to be really interesting with Luke Brown becoming eligible. A guy that's a local legend, and he used to pack the gym at Blackford, and it'll be interesting to see how many extra fans come out just to see Luke.
Tell us a little bit about Luke. When will he be able to play, and when do you think you'll see him play?
Yeah, so he got the waiver from the NCAA, and he's eligible. My understanding is he'll be in uniform tomorrow's game at Illinois State, and there's a possibility of him playing at on Tuesday night at home against Eastern Illinois. Now, I don't know that. The unique thing about his situation is he couldn't join the team until the semester, which was just this past week. So, he hasn't, while he's been working out on his own, and his workouts obviously legendary, and he's in terrific shape, he's really just now getting involved with the team. So it's a totally unique aspect. But look, the kid can play, and I have no doubt that he's going to help us.
And Eastern Illinois is coached by former Evansville ace and Indiana Hoosier Marty Simmons, right?
Yeah, sure enough. And we had another Evansville, DJ Ballantyne, as an assistant for IU Kokomo. So it's good to see him in the house the other day.
How hard is it for you to watch a game where, Indiana University Kokomo was outmanned? It's just, Ball State's just a much bigger program. And of course, any Division I program that IU Kokomo plays, but is it difficult for you to watch that kind of a matchup, or to watch or call something that's a blowout?
It's definitely, you got to try to keep it interesting, and it's certainly your preference is to have a close game and one that's super competitive. That's always keeps the fans' interest, keeps your interest. So, but I don't. It's not any more difficult, and I recognize that one of the things doing the games on ESPN is it's not like we're Ball State homers. They want us to try to play it as straight down the middle. So the way I look at it, whether it's IU Kokomo or on Tuesday, the Eastern Illinois fans that are watching, is they're tuned in. And so I need to, no matter what the score, I need to continue to call the game and their players, and, not going to sugarcoat anything, but you know what, I'm going to represent and talk about what's going on no matter if it's a 10-point lead or 20, and maybe share a few stories, talk about kids on their team. But, all things considered, hey, I'd love buzzer beaters or going right down to the wire, but it doesn't matter to me if, if it's a 20 or 25 point game. I know those kids are out there still playing their hearts out.
Greatest game that you've either watched live, broadcasted, or played in that sticks in your memory?
Wow, that is a great question. Oh man, I have done close to 600 games as a broadcaster, and wow.
And while you ponder that, what's what coach is the biggest character, or somebody that you're like, people don't know that this guy has got a sense of humor, or has a, is animated, or just, he just doesn't show it?
Yeah, without question, that's an easy answer for me. And it's somebody that people will know is animated, but I've got to say Charlie Coles. When he was at Miami, what an absolute joy to talk to, interact with. I would not typically, after the game, we'll do our coaches show, or if it's on TV, it wraps up. I won't stick around for the post-game press conferences. I would not miss a Charlie Coles post-game presser, whether Miami was coming to our place or we were going there. He was that entertaining, and before the game, and I get it, a lot of coaches, they want to concentrate on what's going on, and they kind of maybe could be standoffish. Charlie would chat for 20 minutes. He'd interact with fans, and man, he had some incredible stories. So that's one guy, and again, left us way too soon, but without a doubt, he was a special man.
So what kind of interest does Luke Brown bring back to the Cardinals? Yeah, I mean, have you seen a little spark in interest, or will it be an interesting conference season?
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole dynamics again. I mean, I think it's kind of unprecedented to get a waiver, not practice at all, and come out. And so I'm intrigued. I think everyone is. And, I think the thing for me is, just the expectations. You can't, there's a lot of people looking at, Luke Brown is not going to be a saver. You can't put that type of pressure on the young man, and he has dealt with it incredibly, an amazing, humble, just, you see his interviews from all the attention that he was getting at Blackford, maturity beyond his years. And so I just hope people give him a chance. There's not many freshmen, I don't care if you come in the middle of the season or right out of the gate, that come in and make a huge difference. So let him get acclimated, whether he scores 20 or he scores 2. I'm not going to get too high or too low. He's got a great future ahead of him. He's a great young man. And I think he's going to bring, there's no doubt he's going to bring some energy. And I'm really curious on Tuesday night to see what kind of crowd we have show up.
David Eha, we went a little bit long. I appreciate you. I appreciate your stories, and you help keeping the nostalgia alive.
I appreciate everything you do, Billy. And, I live in Columbus, Ohio, so I've got a 2-hour and 15-minute drive to every home game. So that's a lot of podcasts, and I appreciate you keeping me company and hearing all the stories about Indiana basketball.
Of course, my wife was in the kitchen. I was watching Indiana University, Kokomo, and Ball State, and all of a sudden my wife comes out and goes, "Did I just hear your name mentioned?" I did. Yes, you did.
There you go. There you go. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. Thank you so much.
You got it, buddy.